Hello again. In this video, I'm going to go over section R3, objective 6, which is about adding and subtracting radicals. And so I just want to look at a couple of examples to show you how we do this. Okay, so in this first example, notice that we have three different terms here, but each of these terms have the same type of radical in it. Each of these radicals is the cube root of 7t squared. And then notice you have different coefficients in front of each of those radicals. Like this one is a 5, this one's a -2, and this one's a +1. And so these are really like terms, and we can just add up the coefficients of these terms to determine how many of these cube root of 7t squared radicals there are. And so you can see there's 5 minus 2 plus 1 of them. And so 5 minus 2 plus 1 would be 4. Now another way to do this is to say that the cube root of 7t squared is in common with each of these terms, and so you can factor it out. Okay, so I'm going to write it that way. Okay, so if you factor it out of here, you're left with a 5. If you factor it out of here, you're left with a -2, and if you factor it out of here, you're left with that imaginary 1 that sits in front of that radical. So it's +1. Okay, and then you factor that cube root of 7t squared out. Okay, so that's what happens when you factor this cube root of 7t squared out. You're left with a 5 here, you're left with a -2 here, and you're left with a 1 here. And then you can just add these up, and you get 5 minus 2, which is 3, plus 1, which is 4. And so that's how you combine those radicals. That's how you add and subtract them. Okay, now you can only do this if you have the same radical in each of these terms. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to factor it out. Okay, so let's look at part B. Now, when you look at part B, you want to add these two radicals together. But initially, when you look at this, these two radicals do not appear to be the same radicals. And at this point, it doesn't look like it. But it could be the case that when we simplify these radicals, they actually simplify down to the same radical. So we need to simplify these down first before we can decide whether they're the same radical. Okay, so I'm going to do that over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to factor 98 down into its prime factorization. Okay, so there's a factor of 2 in here for sure. So I think it's 2 times 49. That gives you 98. And then 49 is 7 times 7. So this would factor into 2 times 7 squared. Okay. And then, so I'm going to write that out. 2 times 7 squared. And then you have this x cubed. And what I'm going to do with that x cubed, of course, is write it as x squared times x, because I want to match the index of the radical, which is a 2. Now notice there's still 3 x's here, right? So it adds up to 2 plus 1 gives me 3, okay? And then times y. Okay, and then 5 times, now I'm going to factor 18. That's 9 times 2, and then 9 is 3 times 3. So this is the same as 3 squared times 2. Okay, and then x to the 5th I'm going to write as x squared times x squared, and then you're left with 1x. And there are 5 x's there. And then times y. Okay, and then I'm going to go through and just take the square root of every one of those numbers. I can break it up like this. Okay, and then let's see what we're left with. So this would cancel to 7. You can't simplify this any further. So that's 7. This is x. This you can't simplify, and this you can't simplify. Okay, and then the 5, this simplifies to 3, so that becomes 5 times 3. Square root of 2 does not simplify. This becomes x, and this becomes x. And then this is the square root of x and the square root of y. Okay, so let's see what we're left with. So I'm going to rearrange the order in which I multiply all this. So it's really 7x squared, because you've got 2 x's there, times the square root of 2x and y. I can put that under 1 square root, plus this appears to be 15, right? 3 times 5, 15, and then x squared. And then under the radical, I'm left with 2xy again. Okay, so look, by simplifying these radicals down to their simplest form, you can see that they really are the same radical. And so I can actually factor that radical out. And if I factor it out of here, I'm left with 7x squared. And I'm left with 15x squared when I factor it out of this. And then these two are like terms, so you can add these together and you have 22x squared times the radical, 2x, the square root of 2xy. Okay, so one thing I think you should be aware of is initially these radicals didn't appear to be the same, but after reducing them and simplifying them down to their lowest terms, we did see that they were the same radical. And that's important, because if they're not the same radical, then you can't combine these two terms by adding them together. But if they are the same radical, then you can combine the two and add them together. Okay, so it's important to know whether these are the same radicals. And at first, they may not appear to be the same radical, so it's important that you simplify them first. Okay, let's look at this last one. So here the radicals appear to be the same. So I can factor out the square root of 5x. And when I factor it out of here, I'm left with a 3. And when I factor it out of here, I'm left with a 2x. And now I can't combine these because these are not like terms. And this can't be reduced any further. So I think this is the simplest you can write this. Okay? Okay, so I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.